Absolutely, and this is a chance for the Russian authorities to make a list of all the brave Navalny supporters for use later. They didn't stop them in the end from getting a hearse. I saw a hearse go by, and it is a big public demonstration of a kind that's very rare these days in Russia. But I think the authorities have decided that going in all out to just crush it would be more trouble than it's worth. They'll just want this over as quickly as possible.
Hundreds of people have gathered in Moscow for the funeral of Alexei Navalny. The Russian opposition leader died on the 16th of February while in custody at a penal colony in Siberia. Crowds could be heard shouting Navalny as his body arrived at the church. Well, joining me now is the author and Russia expert, Edward Lucas. Edward, thanks for coming back on the programme. I mean, I said there are hundreds of people gathered in Moscow. I've looked at the pictures. It's actually thousands. And there's a level of bravery there because the security services will have been filming the crowds. They will be looking to identify the people that have turned out here.
Absolutely, and this is a chance for the Russian authorities to make a list of all the brave Navalny supporters for use later. They didn't stop them in the end from getting a hearse. I saw a hearse go by, and it is a big public demonstration of a kind that's very rare these days in Russia. But I think the authorities have decided that going in all out to just crush it would be more trouble than it's worth. They'll just want this over as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like a pretty big police presence, but it seemed very, very calm. And from the bits that I saw, there was nothing really kicking off.
No, people were throwing flowers into the street to sort of land on the hearse. And there's been a very moving tribute from Yulia Navalnaya, Alexei Navalny's widow, really touching post on social media. And the live stream is going out on X, or at least it's now Twitter. But I just think it's really important not to overestimate this. The Russian opposition is basically broken and fragmented and crushed. Putin is in total control for now of Russia. The only real opposition to Putin is the armed forces of Ukraine. And I slightly worry that we're over-focusing on Navalny and under-focusing on the much bigger story, which is the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair comment, and you know on this programme, because we've had you on before, that we've talked a lot about Ukraine, and I went out and visited there last year and did a show from there and all the rest of it. I think just in terms of talking about it today, because today is the funeral, what I've been struck by is the fact that it's not just his bravery in speaking up against an autocratic regime and the personal sacrifice that he's paid, but also the bravery shown by his wife, who has spoken out, Yulia, that you spoke about, but also his mother, who has spoken about how she has received threats regarding her other son as well. And, we still don't have a cause of death. We still don't have an official version. There's lots of things in this case that are deeply, deeply troubling.
Absolutely. And perhaps one of the most sort of galling and poignant aspects of it is that there's well-sourced speculation that the Russian authorities were getting ready to swap Navalny and two other prisoners in exchange for a Russian hitman who's in jail in Berlin for having killed an emigre Georgian of Chechen extraction. And that at the last minute, Putin just decided he didn't want to see Navalny at liberty in the West, taunting him from afar, and had him bumped off. Now, we obviously don't know whether that's true or not, but it sounds all too likely. I think that the bravery of Mrs. Navalny, his mother, and of his wife are really striking. But I just wish that there was real opposition to the Putin regime across Russia. We this time 10, 12 years ago, we were seeing really big protests, tens of thousands of people on the streets of Moscow. We've had episodes of big protests in provincial Russian capitals, Khabarovsk a few years ago, and all that seems to have gone. In the end, the majority of Russians either actively support the war and support Putin or don't feel they want to take any risks in opposing him, and that really gives him free rein, not only against Ukraine, but also, as we're seeing, against NATO and against us. And this latest nuclear saber rattling from Putin should be deeply alarming for everyone who's listening to this program and everybody else as well.
I mean, I guess we can't be too critical for the fact that all those thousands of people that were on the streets a year ago aren't there now, because to what end was their protest? You know, nothing has changed. Russia continues in exactly the course it was on before in terms of the invasion and in terms of its anti-NATO and anti-West rhetoric. I mean, I guess for me, what's interesting as well is that a number of foreign officials were seen around the church. The US ambassador, for example, was one of those who were noted there, and I think that you know there is a question here of what is going to be the West's position when this saber rattling gets even greater, as it will and has to do for Putin.
Well, I'm afraid our deterrence is completely shot. You know, there was a time when having a Western diplomat present at a trial really meant something. We saw that in the Soviet era when the Politburo under Brezhnev was really worried about what the West might say on human rights issues like the imprisonment of the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Andrei Sakharov. And I think that the Russian regime under Putin has grown a really thick skin. They are not scared of what we say. They're not scared of what we do. And there may be indeed some Western diplomats braving the very chilly weather in Moscow today. I think it's about one degree centigrade. And they will go there. They'll probably get insulted for it and may get harassed a bit on their way back. That's sort of part of the course of being a Western diplomat. There are a handful of Western journalists. They're still covering it, although they know that Evan Gershkovich of the Wall Street Journal is in jail for more than well over a year now, nearly two for supposedly for espionage, but actually for committing journalism. But the Russian regime really has grown, as I say, grown a very thick skin on this, and we should be really worried about that.
Indeed. Well, Luke, thanks so much for talking to me again today. That's Edward Lucas there, author and expert on Russia.